We're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Biblical Hitmen. I'm your host, Steven. We have another live that we're on YouTube with. We got an awesome guest today, Eric, FireMedic8, and we'll roll right into him here in just a moment. But folks, if you want to support what it is I do, this show, this podcast, be sure to head on over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button, like the show, share it with your friends. Comments are important for the videos to get out there, so say what you want to say. Also, you can support the show on audio platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, wherever you can consume your podcast content. It's where the show is. And I just encourage reviews and all that stuff. But we got Eric, FireMedic8, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So for the audience that's not familiar with you, it's your first time on the show. Could you just tell us a little bit about yourself and where they can support you, your platforms, and all that stuff?
Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can obviously go to my YouTube channel, and for I understand, you're going to put that in the description box. That's pretty much it. If you on some of the alternative platforms, you can find me on BitChute, Rumble, Substack, Telegram, and Odyssey, but I don't post there much anymore, but I used to. That's pretty much it. FM8, that's what you can.
FM8, I love it, man. I love it. And you got the red line back there, right? That's pretty cool. And the content that you get into is very important. I want to hear a little bit of your story, what got you into this research, because this stuff is very fascinating. It used to be talked about a few years ago, right? It used to be pretty kind of popular, and it kind of died away. So I'm glad that we're bringing this, this situation to light a little bit, man.
Right.
What got you into all this?
Well, like we were talking before we went live, like most people today who really dig into this type of stuff, 9 times out of 10, it's the people or parents who have children who are profoundly afflicted with all kinds of so-called anomalous things. Anomalous this, anomalous, we don't know what this is. And you hear this word idiopathic all the time, and basically means from unknown origin. I had several idiopathic diseases at one time that I didn't take the treatment, so I never got it. So that's the driving force for a lot of parents today. And when these parents start to notice that things are not going right, and then your child gets labeled with X, Y, and Z, failure to thrive, and stuff like that's a big one that they love to throw on your child the day they're born, just about. And which just means they just been poisoned to you know what. And so that was my drive. I think by his 3rd year, that's when I was like, I got to get off my what, and I need to start understanding what's going on. And that's why I was already in the fire department. My son was born while I was in the fire academy, and I missed a portion of the fire academy. So I missed driver pump operator. So I had to go back my 4th year to get that.
Oh man.
Yeah, that was really cool. But anyway, because I was a senior guy, so they, all the rookies in there in the rookie schools.
Yeah. For people that don't know, that's like taking the entire engineer's test at a fire department. You go through like this 40-hour course. But
yeah, it's a whole week. Yeah, that's right. But anyway, and so you realize that. So I was 3 years in, just a firefighter, EMT. It was called enhanced back then. It's called EMT advanced now for those who aren't paramedics. I was like, I'm listening to the doctors talk and all this stuff, and I was like, nothing's landing on me. It don't make no sense. And so I was like, you know what? I need to go to paramedic school. The next thing you know, it wasn't even a couple of weeks later that the fire department, my particular fire department, said we're going to host one, because we have one of the biggest cities in Virginia. We were one of the biggest cities land-wise. And so, not population density, but they offered that, and I jumped in, and I just was a sponge. I just happened to have the best, what's our instructor? Our instructor was the best. Like, I could just sit there and listen to him. I didn't take one note the entire. This is how you know your teacher, instructor, professor is really good, where you don't have to take a note. It just sets in your memory. And so, and that's when I was able to start to combat what was going on and understand. But that's also where the parent that comes into knowledge, if both parents don't come into knowledge at the same time, comfortable in the knowledge that they're understanding about their actual child's health, that's where friction comes in, and that's where the family becomes destabilized. And that's what happened to my family. My wife and I, we're divorced and stuff like that, and your whole family becomes, they don't know it, they don't see it this way, but from my perspective, your whole family becomes your adversary, you know.
It's important for the two to agree when it comes to like power of attorney. You know, a child at a very young age that is not old enough to make decisions, man. It's so important.
Yeah. And I almost thought I actually had to go get an attorney to go ahead and write that up, like immediately. We didn't. Me and my wife, we were able to work it out and all that kind of stuff. And so, but that's when I became, I guess it was to them, they kind of called me an extremist. I guess you would say, like, everything you do is just too extreme, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and my knowledge became even more broader because I was jumping in every single, I mean, you know, firefighter, fire departments, public safety, you have unlimited access to what you can instruct and teach. And if you get really good, you can almost be regional, you know, citywide. Like, I live in a 10-city area, and you could, next thing you know, you're teaching over here, you're teaching over there, part-time teaching over here, and all that kind of stuff, like ACLS, PALS, trauma, advanced airway, tactical medicine. I was also on the state SWAT team at the time for a little bit, a functional paramedic in the ER. So I was putting my hand in every single jar I could put my hand in to obtain knowledge, because I felt like I was in this unseen war, but the war was with, you know, his care plan staff, or his staff that is running his care, and my family. You know?
Yeah.
And I had to be sure about what I thought I was doing. And man, I'm gonna tell you, I lived in doubt for a very long time.
Can I show the people the rig that you sent me?
Yeah, if you got it.
Yeah, I got it pulled up here.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
I was also on I was also on a regional communication team, and so that's one of three, I believe. So I've been out of the loop since 2022. So I was terminated in officially July 2022 from the fire department, and I was on that team from like 2012 all the way up to 2022. Yeah. So, well, actually, sometime in 2020, I was booted off the team in 2021. And that's a whole other story. And that has to do with all the nonsense of 2020.
Right. No, well, it definitely, for like the chemistry in the fire department, even started to kind of split. It became like political, you know, the times of 2020. If you were in that workspace with EMS or people on the front lines, the politics got dragged into it, and people would start splitting, and it almost felt like you know, the right and the left, you know.
Yeah.
Got brought into it.
Yeah. And so when it came to 2020, I wasn't convinced of anything, because I was an acting EMS supervisor with that particular department. And so, and actually, before we actually had a commissioned officer run that position, I was my particular shift's EMS officer for almost 3 years. Me and another guy switched out sort of on a regular basis. So I was one of the first EMS supervisors for that city, unofficially, because it wasn't a position yet. But because we took over EMS in general, so it was mostly volunteer running EMS. So we took over the whole thing. Yeah. So we didn't have EMS supervisors. So I did that. So I had access to our database And I had lots of friends who had access to their database within the region. And so we saw no changes if we look at things statistically. And when you say that to people who aren't in the business, and I hate to say it this way, but most people aren't in the business of death. And if you're in public safety, that's what you see. You see that on a regular basis, a regular basis. And in particular districts, you'll see it more than others within the same city. You know what I mean? My particular district was extremely violent. Was one of the most extremely violent districts in the whole area. So, I mean, you're going to run a shooting or stabbing any other shift, pretty much, or several stabbing shootings. You know, it's not quite Chicago level, but it ain't quite Norfolk level either. But it's Norfolk's pretty bad too. But Norfolk keeps all their stuff under the rug, like people just disappear from there, and because they got lots of gangs, and nobody reports it, so it seems lesser than what it is.
Right.
If that makes sense. But anyway, I don't even know where I was going with this.
Yeah. So you know, the original question I asked was, you know, like what pushed you into this kind of research, and what have you found? And it's probably a lot, right? That's a really broad question to ask. But if you could highlight some very important things, you know, I guess I'd just recommend that.
Well, I guess the main thing is when we just look at people's blood, looking at the skin's a whole different ballgame. There's a lot going on there too. But for me and a lot of the colleagues in my space, my research space, if you will, so I actually know microbiologists in the research space. Now they don't publish; they kind of stay behind the scenes and they don't show their faces, and you'll never see their face, and you'll never see a word from them. But there's lots of those guys and ladies throughout the world who have been looking at what I just started looking at 5 years ago, as far as in so-called microbiology world. You know, I'm not a microscopist by trade at all. I don't have any specialty training. I just have a lot of brilliant people that I have access to that I'm able to learn off of and glean from what they're doing and all that kind of stuff. So, and they're still coming out of the indoctrination process that they've been through in their PhDs, you know. So they realize that they're still trying to, I guess, rework their mind to really figure out what's going on, what they see, because they don't have any literature for what they're understanding. Like why is there a high percentage of silicon in everybody's blood? Why is there a high percentage of silicon in everybody's sweat?
Yeah. And right, like even the forever chemicals is another thing. But that might not be as useful on the technological level as silicon. Like, what's silicon doing?
Well, silicon, whatever. Like it's high.
It's in microchips, man.
Exactly, Silicon Valley, right? So that's technology. That's technology base. That is the primary thing that you will see in, you know, the microchip world or the computer-based world, the motherboard world. That's what you see, you know. And so, but look, and there's a whole other element to it. This we're dealing with biomimicry. So you can see, like, you could look at a blood, you could take a sample, and it looks relatively normal from the beginning. But then where I would say where the enemy starts to show up is, you know, day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7. And what you see is a complete horror show of what looks like, if you pull up a picture of mycelium, what you will see is like, wow, where did that come from? Like mycelium threads in the blood, in people's blood. So what is mycelium? It's fungus. But it's not fungus. That's the biomimetic or biomimicry. That's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with things that look like things that you can find in nature, but they are not of nature.
So is this what it would be here on the
Yeah.
screen, on the
Yeah.
ceiling?
Yeah.
It's kind of wild, man.
Yeah.
And there's so many uh there's so many routes that these things are infecting the body through, right?
Right.
You know, what routes would you say we're getting hit on like on a daily basis?
At most, we're getting hit with inhalation. And inhalation is the biggest route. Um, can I say like a particular solution that I started taking to see if there was any element of realness to what was going on? And I'll just say a saturated iodine, if you will, a high saturated iodine. And I had the fungus in high quantity in maybe day 6, day 7, day 8 in my drying blood set, my own particular one. Right. So I was like, well, and I tested the snow before. I tested snow and fresh caught snow, fresh caught rain, and they all have it. It all has like it all goes from like you watch the meltdown, especially snow. You watch it melt down, you observe it, and then as it dries out, it's just filled with threads everywhere. There's just threads everywhere, you know. And so what I did was one time I put it out for a fresh catch rain or a fresh catch snow. I put extreme dose in there, like a major dose of this iodine, and it didn't grow, didn't take off. So that tells me that there's an obvious element of some form of realness, that there is some nature, because the engineers of our world, I mean, they're not the most high, so they're not the creator, so they have to augment our reality, so that they pick and pull from the creation and recreate it, and and whatever image they want it to look like. But at the end of the day, it starts to look like nature, but it's not nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with sorcerers who know how to manipulate nature. And so, for instance, if doctors see this stuff in your blood, or a culture, in occult blood culture, guess what they're going to do? They're going to do the treatment, right? And so you're going to be on a multitude of like so-called antibiotics, and I'm sure there's some injections for this type of stuff too. And so it's there. And if they do a like a ENT will come in and scope your nose or whatever and look in there, they'll see it in there too. If you're bad off, if you can't take care of yourself as good as you should, especially if you're one of those folks who just are like sedentary, don't do anything, don't take me, like you don't do nothing for your body or your biology that's great at all. And then next thing you know, they scope, they go in with this, I can't get rid of the sinus infection, doc. I can't get rid of the sinus infection. It's horrible. I feel so much pain and movement in my face. They go in and get scoped. Oh, you got several colonies of this in there, right? And then next thing you know, you're septic. Well, when do you get septic? Well, shortly after you start the treatment.
Mm.
So it's crazy.
Yeah, and when there's like a foreign object in the body, when there's something in the body that's not supposed to be there, the body goes through like an immune response.
Well, actually, they don't, because that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about biomimicry. So the biomimetic is not considered a foreign invader. It's considered self. So we don't have that self versus non-self problem like you do in the so-called autoimmune category. That's the engineered stuff.
Right.
So if you actually have something real in your body that's from nature, like you actually have a true fungus infection, your body's going to tell you. But if you have a biomimetic infestation, your body has no clue. And that's the problem. And that's the major problem that we're dealing with today, is the biomimicry. And it's all over the place. Like there's probably several types of things that you can purchase right off the shelf. It says it right in there. And so people have been so, what's the word, relaxed on certain terms like biosimilar, biologic, bioidentical, right? But at the end of the day, I just call them all biomimetics. But these are things that are offered to you that your body won't reject it. And that's the whole thing. That's the whole ploy, is for your body not to reject none of this nonsense. Whether it's a written, script, biomimetic, bio-mimicry, bioidentical, biologic. And I know, I hope your comments don't get flooded with, well, I take this, I take that. You're full of, what, Eric, you can't. But I'm just telling you, as far as and there's already been a multitude of people who've came before me who proved things out, and unfortunately, most of them just seem like, and I'm not putting down podcasters, but at the end of the day, that's all they seem like, are just guys with a mic and not doing anything. Guys and gals with a mic, But there are a handful of what I call legacy researchers who actually do the work, and that's what I'm about. It's people who put their hands on things and they observe and they measure and they repeat. That's the type of people that I'm dealing with. And one of the ones that I would say, if you can see any of his research, is Clifford Carnicom. He's one of the OGs in this. He is the OG in this arena, and so he's like the standard, if you will, to understand these things. Like he's been out for a while. He's been talking about the air. He's been talking about the air and the rain and everything he captured and everything he's been culturing and the stuff that he finds growing. It's unreal. And I call everything synthetic biological infestations. That's what I call no matter what it is. If it's these so-called Morgellons like fibers, synthetic biology. If it's like this mycelium like structures, synthetic biology. It's in your blood. And it shows up later. Why does it show up? Because it's utilizing your body. And so it wouldn't show up in your blood so quickly, because if that's the case, it's going to do it inside you. It's not trying to do that inside you. It's not trying to necessarily clot you off and cause big problems. So your vasculature system is more like a highway. And so in this highway, how many exits do you think there are in the vascular highway? It's lots of exits. It's probably more exits than highway at the end of the day. And so that blood, based on the laws of attraction or affinity, they get off where they're supposed to. If they need to get into the liver, they're going to get into the liver. They need to get into the kidneys, they're going to get into the kidneys. Right? And that's what these engineers are doing with nature.
It's kind of like too, you're kind of describing that these things can go to certain systems in the body or specific organs. Like, what about receptor sites? If these things are able to, number one, compute or transmit data in some way, right? Like, this is getting into maybe conspiracy land.
No. Stop right there. Stop right there.
Okay.
I got something I can share. Right. I got you, buddy. I got you covered.
You get what I'm saying, though? Like,
yeah. No, I got you covered.
Because I know occultists and I know the mystery schools. I'm
gonna drop you a message right now to your if I could find it. I just had it.
The alchemists have always been very curious of how to create a body, and so I'm wondering if this has a connection with that process.
Yeah,
being successful.
So what you were talking about, transmission. I'm just dropping it to you right now.
Okay.
So read the title of that and who published it and how many views it has.
Oh yeah, let me pull this up. Hang on. The Mac is awesome, by the way. I got a Mac. The connectivity pretty cool.
Yes, you just got that up on your MacBook, right?
Yeah. Hold on, I'll share it right now.
Yeah.
So what is this I'm about to show?
You might want to look at it first before it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube. It's published on YouTube.
Gotcha.
13 years ago.
I think. How do I do this? Sorry, everybody. It's just a separate window, so maybe that's it.
Can you just drag it over? Is it a drag screen?
No, not that good. Let's see. Is it showing now or no?
No.
No. Okay. Well, it's that symbol right there. Email it to me. That might be better if you email it to me.
Okay.
Whatever, yeah.
Do you see enough of it and you feel comfortable with me talking about it?
Yeah. So it's you can find this on YouTube. It's what's the name? So Jeannie Kowski remarks on unleashing spectrum for medical body area networks. Looks
there
like
you go.
Presentation.
There you go.
Okay.
Yep. It's a presentation at I think one of these
13 years ago.
13 years ago.
Very long time ago.
At a hospital university, and I think in Washington. They're talking about this wireless body network, and I have a couple of friends who run two I guess say major channels talking about wireless body network all the time. And that's that's Non-Vaxxer 420 and Sabrina Wallace on the Synergy channel. So these two people are the ones that are talking about bio-digital convergence and the wireless body network nonstop, like every day. That's what they're talking about. That's what they do. And I don't focus on that. I've been aware of it for a very long time because I watched that video a very long time ago. And why would I do that? Well, I'm on a communication team. So I started waking up to all of this because I was going to seminars, communications, comm stuff, tabletops, and you're hearing what they're saying. Your colleagues, your brothers, they're not hearing. You know why they're not hearing? Because we're at gosh dang Virginia Tech, and all they worry about is, hey man, we got tickets to the next game, and man, there's all kinds of places to eat here, and that's all they worry about is lunch and dinner. Typical fireman, right? And I'm sitting there listening to these guys. I'm like, wow, these guys are just telling us that they're taking us over. I mean, that's what I'm hearing. But the rest of the people aren't hearing that, right? And so that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So you can see it now, right? I got it pulled up here.
I can.
Yeah. So that's the video there for
titles
who wants to watch it.
Yeah, right there. They're giving you a presentation, and they're using the body, and they're basically showing you a transmission coming out of the body. And 13 years ago, that whole video was just talking about how bad it is to have EKG wires and pulse ox wires all over the place. And it's just not good to get a critical patient into the CT, into the MRI. And it's not very good when they're in, they always make it seem like it's going to be the latest, greatest thing that's going to revolutionize, critical care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But nobody stops to think, okay, like this is inner body dwelling, like it's inside your body. How's it get there? Who puts it there? How long does it last? Right. That's nobody asks these questions. Like nobody asks these. And I've sat in rooms. Like, just put it this way. I've always been the guy who either my captain, my battalion chief, or my ER manager, they didn't want to sit in particular meetings. So who did they send? They would always send me. So I'm the guy who's not an officer, who's not a manager, who's always representing either the fire department or the ER. Sitting in there, listening, it's like, wow, nobody here gets it. Nobody in here actually knows what they're talking about and what's about to deploy. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sit there like, wow. This is the world we live in,
Yeah, it's like you're drawing conclusions that you want other people to draw out of this whole painting, that you're kind of navigating or putting together. And people are so ignorant in this world, man. Really is kind of sickening. And I really wonder, that's got to be another part of the system. right?
Yeah.
You know, just get people so demoralized to
Yeah.
what's in front of them.
Well, 2020 was the great working.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Again, with 2020, if you didn't come out of 2020 with perfect vision, you may never get it. You may never get it. The rest of everything, you may the delusion or the illusion may just always be in front of you, or you may always have the wool over your eyes, and you may never peel it back. Maybe the wool might get a little thinner here and there, or whatever. You might start to see a little light through it, or whatever. But if you didn't see that propaganda ruled the world, you never will. You never will. And again, it was mostly a masquerade party. That's the main thing that was going on, was a masquerade party. And basically, I mean, a mask. If you didn't see that mask, you wouldn't even know anything happened. You wouldn't. I've asked, I can't even tell you how many people I asked. I said, have you ever witnessed somebody die in front of you? Do you know how many people ever seen somebody die in front of them?
Yeah, not many.
I mean, I haven't come across a person yet that I've ever asked, and I've been asking for years. And I could tell them, well, I've seen more DOAs than I've seen people die in front of me. But I have seen plenty die in front of me too. But I've seen way more DOAs than I have seen critical patients who died in front of me. Now, I have seen a multitude of people who are what I call clinically dead, but according to protocols, they're not gone yet because they're in a shockable rhythm or something like that, right? And so I've seen just as many as those. But it's either dead on arrival, or what I call is ACLS dead or clinically dead. And if they're ACLS dead, that means you got to work ACLS on them for a little bit. Right. Create a giant bill for the family. And that's what you just did. But not to be cold hearted or anything, but that's what we
so with these scientists and these professors that are examining that there's things in the body that seem to be you said radiating, right? Or do the does this have the capability to send
transmission based? Yeah.
Would you say like through frequency or
yeah. I had a few friends in the very beginning. I don't know what happened to them. A lot of friends who were very savvy with I guess you would say it's a 2.4 gigahertz or BLE specifically, and was able to isolate and show that there were a multitude of people. Now, a lot of people will say that this is not true, or they'll say it's fake. But I too found it with that, that truck that you just showed. Yeah. I had a system called Blue Sky Mass. I've been out of the game for a while, so I can't remember everything I did. So Blue Sky Mass, something like that, which is a Bluetooth mesh network. And I discovered a new signal in my environment one day after I got, I guess you'd say, an acute radiation syndrome around a handful of people who were transmitting a signal in the 2.4 gigahertz range. And so the 2.4 gigahertz range is one of the most important frequencies out there.
Would you say that that's a low frequency?
Well, it's 2.4 gigahertz. It's basically 2,400 megahertz. If you're measuring it in megahertz, but it's 2.4 gigahertz. In that particular, the BLE, the 2.4, it does several things. For BLE, there's like 40 channels, and I think they're about 2 megahertz apart. So that's for interference. So they don't have any interference. But at the same time, there's a lot of things going on with 40 channels open anytime you have a BLE connection. So every time you have a BLE connection to anything, anytime, you're creating what I call is an electromagnetic structure fire. Heat, radiant heat. you can't feel it. Why can't you feel it? Because the energy is so low that you can't feel the heat, but your blood can. Your blood can feel it. And I could tell you, I can see it on your blood. Trust me. I've seen so many people's blood who they operate these phones all day long, all night long, and they have these devices in their ears. And I'm here to tell you, their blood looks, they're RBCs that should look like frisbees and shouldn't be stuck together. They should be like this, just floating around like this, like bumper cars. They could bump at each other and
rolling over each other. That's why they're concave, so they don't get stuck.
Well, they don't get stuck. It's because of zeta potential, or you're not in what I call an electrostatic emergency, and that's what I believe is the number one cause, is that we are in an electromagnetic interference zone 24/7 for the most part, especially firefighter. Public safety is the worst. Public safety is the worst because they have a gosh dang modem router in their truck or in their car. The ambulances are probably the worst by far because there are a multitude of devices running 5 gigahertz, 2.4 gigahertz, and 800 or 900 megahertz, UHF, VHF. So you're getting all this stuff within one truck in the back of a critical care unit. And that's what an ambulance is. That's what an ALS ambulance is. It's a critical care unit. And you're basically setting your blood on fire every day you're in that thing. And so I've seen people's blood look like, gosh dang, what's those little burrs on the ground, little sand burrs or whatever.
Oh,
and
wow.
That's just because your blood is damaged.
Yeah.
And it's microwaved. And I mean, what frequency is in your microwave oven? Well, 2.4. Now, granted, it's connected to a magnetron, which amplifies it or concentrates the energy into your food, which cooks your food from the inside out, right? And so that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a multifaceted assault at the end of the day that more people protect. So more people protect their phone, their earbuds. And how do I know that? It's because I got no watches, no earbuds, no earpieces, no smart anything while you're taking care of my son. No cell phone in the patient care area. That was in his chart. And it took me 3 years to do that. Wow. It took me 3 years of haggling with public relations at the Children's Hospital and other entities within the hospital, because I saw what it was doing to him. I could see. So you got, about smoke reading, right? We're firefighters. So you learn how the most experienced command officer or battalion chief knows how to read smoke through experience, right? So my son taught me how to skin read, and reading his skin showed me what was going on. And I was able to, eventually I got a meter that reads from, like, I think it's 200 megahertz all the way up to so-called 8 gigahertz. And so I could hear what you call registered sounds, registered regulated FCC sounds of certain devices. So I know what a Bluetooth device sounds like. I know what several types of Bluetooth devices sound like. I know what a router sounds like. So I could see different skin presentations based on that meter, and then I could correlate the skin expression to a sound. And yeah, there was obviously the readout is in microwatts per meter squared, I believe. But that's never what I really cared about. Now, the power density does mean something to a degree, but if I heard that sound and I looked at his skin told me to check the meter. All right, we can't be sitting right here. There's a router nearby, a big router, very powerful router, because it has a tapping sound. So that's what I used it for. I used it for his skin and the sound. Now, if the sound was a little bit lighter, 9 times out of 10, guess what would happen? He wouldn't have a skin presentation. So the number one skin presentation that I was most scared of to see on him was these little red dots systemically throughout his entire body. So he had a so-called disease called thrombocytopenia, which means low platelets, right? So the low platelets would give him acute low platelets gives you this red dot presentation called petechiae. So he already suffered from low platelet count anyway, due to what we're learning about now is the synthetic biological, because he was taking a multitude of all kinds of things for a very long time. And it took me a long time to figure it out. And unfortunately, I think that time domain is what ultimately shortened his life. But he taught me a lot. And him taking all of this on his chin like a true soldier, never complained, always gave me a smile, no matter what the situation was. He always gave me a smile. And sometimes I was like, I wish he'd stop, because that just makes me feel like he's winning. You know what I mean? But he always gave me a smile, no matter how much he suffered. Shoot, now I definitely don't know where I'm going.
No. Well, I appreciate you sharing that, man, and blessings to you. And I really, it's a terrible thing, right? That we're faced with on a daily basis, and all of this really is out of our control. Like, we can speak about these things and talk about them and bring them to light, and awareness becomes a wonderful thing, right? Like, if we all kind of start coming together in that way. I think that with this synthetic biology and how it can connect to receptors with the body, I think that this has the possibilities of even sending this information to maybe even like 5G towers or something. And I think they could be laying out like a digital grid.
Well, they've already done that. And then that's
right?
the thing about the interoperability timeline that nobody's talking about. Well, almost nobody's talking about. There are a few people who understand what interoperability means, but most people don't. And that is what we're dealing with. So when somebody is talking about a 5G tower, or they're talking about this tower or that tower, it does not matter. It does not matter what the so-called type of an antenna is. It does not matter, because the interoperability timeline, as far as I can see, because I was on one of the most advanced interoperability teams. So I've known about interoperability for a long time. And so we used to show up on like country boy calls, and they're having a little disaster thing going on for them, and they lost communications. We show up, and what are they talking on? Well, they're talking on 400 megahertz radios, or they're talking on UHF, or talking on VHF. So what do? We come there, and this is old school interoperability, where you can marry up, or you do what's called patches, or digital patches. So, but you have to have a physical radio. You have to have a physical radio, the UHF or the 400, and you have one of yours. And what we used was 800. And so you marry them up, and now everybody on 800 is talking to everybody on UHF, VHF, or 400, whatever they're using. But that's old school interoperability. We're dealing with new school interoperability, that our adversaries have everything communicating to everything. So your smart meter, your router, everything is a part of this infrastructure. So that's the thing, that people are always focused on one thing. Why they do that? Well, it's just human nature, because you don't work, or you haven't experienced that world. I've always said that the Most High put me in places at the right time, even though I felt like it was the wrong time, because I was sick of it. I was sick of being like, I'd leave these meetings or these conferences or these seminars, with my stomach just twisted, and I don't have anybody to talk to. And my wife at the time, we were already having problems, and I can't talk to her family. I can't talk to my family. I literally had nobody to talk to for years. For years.
Yeah. Do you think like genetic editing has anything to do with maybe like a what's the term? Like a synergistic effect to what's in the body and what other foreign objects we may be getting polluted with all the time. Do you think like the two are meant to help one another?
Well, here's I don't necessarily because I've been looking at this for a very long time, and I've talked to some of the most brilliant people in the world, and I've been in many so-called clinical trials that I wish I never went to, but however, I'm glad I did. I've just seen too much, brother. So I don't look at genetics the way most people do. What I see in my experience, and now I have colleagues that don't see eye to eye with me on a great deal of many things. I just see things different. Not saying that they're right, not saying that I'm wrong, or vice versa. I just see things differently. I have a different lens from which I look at. And it looks like to me that it's not genetic editing. What it is genetic borrowing. So what that's probably don't even sound like a very intellectual term, or recruitment, biological recruitment. There you go. It's recruiting materials from cells, from groups of cells, and utilizing it as if it's a general contractor going up the Lowe's building a cabinet. You know what I mean? I call it building the interstellar spacesuit, or interbody dwelling spacesuit. That's what it seems like to me. And like it's almost like I have had multiple dreams of a what I would say is put it in a term that almost everybody can probably understand, or maybe not, like a Grand Theft Auto day.
Wow, like an avatar, almost.
No,
Maybe the concept of it.
Well, I think what they're doing, and just by looking at what they tell you they're doing, they tell you they're communicating to interdimensional beings. That's what they tell you. That's what our enemy, that's what our adversaries tell us, that they are in contact with interdimensional beings. And they have told you that, and they got some of the most advanced technology in the world. And that's what the technology itself is communicating with. And they don't have bodies. They're not physical. They're disembodied.
Mm-hmm.
And so what does the disembodied world always want? A body.
Right. Yeah.
A body. And I know, and then you start to get into the Bible. And then you get into everybody's I don't like to use I don't really like talking about the Bible too much with other people that I don't know. I just been burned too many times when people ask me what I believe and where I see where we're at and stuff like that. I don't like talking about it. But what I see, and it only makes sense to me. Well, Eric, you shouldn't be trying to look at the physical world and make sense of the so-called spiritual world. I was like, well, this is going somewhere, and our adversaries are showing us something, and we should. And if you're seeing it, like if you are biologically seeing these type of alterations that are changing, that are terraforming blood, terraforming different cells, terraforming your organs, and like everything. And some people are so advanced in this infestation. It's like the light's on, but nobody's home, but they're still functioning as if it's still the same person, but with no light on.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen that.
Dude, I'm following you with you, man. You got me with the Nephilim spirits, man. We talk about that all of the time. You know, we
Like,
get in.
yeah, like like just imagine that what I think is they want the Valley of Raphaim. They want all these soldiers back. They're preparing. This is me reading in between their lines that they tell you nonstop. Your adversary. That's the way I look at it. Your adversary is telling you nonstop of who they're talking to, who they're communicating to, what they're doing, and what they want through this so-called transhumanism agenda. That's the spacesuit to host something else that will be more fitting and stronger to make you more resilient and more acceptable to take this thing. So just imagine you having a BLE address and it's assigned and so what do you have on your house? What's on your mailbox?
Right.
Your address. Who lives there? You. So if your body is pulsing out an address, I think that might be what these psychopaths or these wizards or engineers or whatever they are, or whatever they truly are. I don't know. Well, I kind of know.
I just see them as modern day alchemists, man. You know, these people, a lot of them.
It could. I don't think it's necessarily that simple. I think what we're dealing with is these the Psalm 82 characters and the Psalms 83 characters. These two houses work together. The crafty council, the Confederate ones, and the so-called sons of God, the ones who were assigned at the Tower of Babel, and I believe they're the engineers, and I believe that the Psalms 83, the Confederate ones, the ones that will remove the name of the children of the Most High, the tribes of the Most High, keep it just like strike it out of remembrance, and they're doing a dang good job of it too, and that's what's going on, is that the engineers with the flesh and bone puppets, they are the ones that are given this nonstop satire, all of this show, this theater, nonstop to keep us mesmerized and confused, because we expect some of these people to, like, okay, we've gone too far now. Like, who's going to stand up? Who's going to be the authority figure? Like, like, why does everything just seem like we're in the Truman Show, but with vampires everywhere?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's wild. And so that is just my opinion based on my so-called understanding.
Have you seen it's funny, what you just described is basically in the Steven Spielberg movie that's coming out in June or July. Can't remember. But it's Disclosure Day. Okay, right. So there's a few things I picked out in the trailer, and then there's technology, there's alien technology, which the narrative there may be that we got it, we reverse engineered it, we made it ourselves, and that they're using it, like the human race is using this alien tech. But the overall story is that these entities are able to channel through people undetected, right? And with what you were saying about them kind of creating a interbody spacesuit, I wrote that down because I'm going to use that. I like that. Where these people could be developing something that will lead us into the days of Noah coming back or returning, where even the UAP UFO circle and what that disclosure is going to look like, they're merging consciousness with that whole thing now, with the idea of Close Encounter of the Fifth Kind, where people can consciously make these things appear.
Yeah.
But something there's they want to unionize with humanity again, and it may look different than what it looked like, in Genesis 6. It overall, the concept would be very, very similar.
Right, how the Watchers or the B'nai Hala Elohim or whatever you want to call them, whoever they were, they walked amongst men, right? So you can see them, right? And now, again, I know a lot of people don't like, well, if there's a shadowy type people, I mean, we can't prove they exist. But you can obviously, if you're paying attention, you can obviously see that there is a higher force that's way above everything that you see. Like, you don't see them. Why? If you see the mighty ones of this world, the principalities of this world, the ones who are still in charge, have been in charge since the Tower of Babel, because the Most High took the so-called seed of Abraham to himself. That's who he took to himself. And the rest of the nations, according to Scripture, were assigned another one for a righteous example. And you can read that right there in Deuteronomy 32. But they changed it that the borders of society were numbered by the so-called children of Jacob, if you will, or Israel, or the Hebrews, whatever floats your boat. But if you look up the true, like if you go to the oldest translations, it's in the LXX it's far older than the translations that we have today, so called, according to what it says publishing wise. It reads in accordance to the sons of God. It's the same, and it reads exactly the same as it does in Genesis 6, the B'nai Ha Elohim, the sons of the Most High, the divine council. And then you read Psalms 82, you're still looking at the same guys. You're looking at the kings, or the kings of the universe, masters of the universe, right? That's who you're looking at. Those are the engineers. And the Watchers, they want nothing compared to these guys, because the Watchers didn't sit at the table with the Most High. The council did, because the Most High's command structure is all around us, even in the fire department. The command structure, same thing. Captains, you know what I mean? Everything. Chiefs, chief princes, like the one we call Michael. He's a chief prince, right? A king to us. Michael would be a king to us, but they're all princes to the Most High. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so that's what we're dealing. We're dealing with these masters of the universe. We're still dealing with that, because if you read Psalms 82, please show me where he ended them. He said they will die like men one day, but you can't find a follow-up.
Right.
So the only conclusion you can draw is that they're still here, and they still run this place, just as they've done since the fall of the tower.
And I think, the mark of the beast gets mixed into this idea too. There's this phenomenon that's all over culture, all over the movie industry, the music industry, all of it, and it kind of shows you like this black goo. And we had some people talking about it in the chat. The black goo makes me think of like graphene. It makes me think of how mankind can manipulate carbon to perform duties of some sort. I think we're talking about those capabilities and those duties it can perform.
Yeah, graphene is one element. It's one facet of what's going on. Just one facet of multi-vector.
What would you have to say just about that one facet, graphene and all that?
Graphene? Well, just what we know about it is that, like, it's one of the best materials that can sustain tons of bombardment and maintain resiliency under heat, under electromagnetics. And it doesn't become magnetized, or it doesn't alter that much. And it has the ability to store an unfathomable amount of data. So and it's so small, and it can get into your body if somebody came and injected into you.
Yeah. Do you think that they could create a synthetic body out of that, of some sort?
That's what's happening right now, my brother.
I know,
Not
because I'm on that trail.
Not just by that. Again, that is one element of a multitude of elements. Just next time you look at your house, try to go out with like a little yellow piece of pad or something and paper and a pencil, and just think about every single thing it takes to build your house. I mean, you could probably do a Google.
I'm in the process of building right now, so I can relate to that.
Yeah, you could. Yeah. You should already have some type of something that tells you how, like, all the materials that it's going to go into, because that's what they charge you X amount of dollar per square foot, right? Is that
right? Exactly.
Something like that. And so with every square foot, you got materials,
line item after line item.
Yeah. And that's what our adversary is doing. And our adversary has been doing that for a long time, because we have had people who've been talking about this stuff. And of course, most of what they were talking about years ago fell on deaf ears. Because people they didn't have their soul shocked. And that's what 2020 did. 2020 rattled the most cages. And I'm here to tell you, and I'm not trying to belittle people who didn't get fired or get harassed during COVID, but I'm here to tell you that a lot of good men and women were harassed to no end during COVID. And all they were talking about was informed consent and showing people the clinical trial. That's all they were doing.
Right.
Not telling them not to take it. And that's not what I was doing. I just noticed that it's no different being in the back of the ambulance. If you have a alert and orient conscious patient and you're about to administer anything, whether it's a nitro or some type of IV administration, what do you got to do to your conscious patient? Well, you got to tell them what you suggest to give them and say, hey, I'm going to start an IV. Okay, I'm going to start this IV. Now, granted, everybody doesn't necessarily do this, but in theory, this is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to get consent and explain as we are doing things to the alert and orient non-critical patient. Now, the critical patient, that's a different story. You're typically operating an implied consent. But when you're operating an informed consent, you got to tell them. You got to inform them what you're doing. So that's what we did every day, all day long. We operated in mostly informed consent. And so you get in trouble and harassed, and you get all these so-called near arrest threats. It's crazy. It's crazy. But a lot of people experience that. And those people don't trust anybody anymore. They don't trust nobody. Why? Because, like, for me, I worked in the fire department at the time. I don't know how many people were there, but it was over 300 firefighters that were there in my department. 300. And all of them at that time disgusted me, except for one. They did some of the most disgusting things I've ever seen them do to their so-called fellow man or woman, even within the house and outside the house. It's mind-blowing. But all of those people, they didn't see how they behaved, how they acted, how they treated each other. They didn't see it. It's still like every time I see a fire truck, I like it burns my blood, man. It boils my blood,
Yeah. No doubt, man. I want to roll this into a fun, interesting conversation where, not saying that none of it is, but this is like the stuff I really enjoy kind of discussing with other people. And I want to get your perspective of this. Okay. We were talking about disclosure, talking about, the council, right. And getting into these principalities and all of this. Seems to be that the narrative is pushing us towards, normalizing with humanity that there is non-human intelligence living amongst us. Have you put any thought into what this scenario kind of plays out for you? Have you put any thought into that?
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, and again, I'm a little reluctant to kind of say where I am on certain things on so-called topics. I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, and just so you know, the Southern Baptist Church, everything they say is right all the time.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
Everybody else,
I know what you're saying.
everybody else in the world is absolutely wrong. Only they are right. Um, did almost a year seminary and walked away from it. So I don't. I've seen the church burn too many brothers and sisters, and so I don't operate within the organized church at all. I used to work. I was an assistant youth director, long time ago, long many moons ago, and I just saw how emotionally unhinged men got by asking questions, not telling you what you believe, but asking questions. And again, like the default what I call, I used to call the default Baptist, but now I just say the default church reaction to asking a lot of these questions that nobody could ever answer. Never, nobody could ever answer it. But they got emotional, and then once a grown man getting emotional over a question, that's the most ridiculous thing, because a word shouldn't hurt you at all. Right? It should not hurt you at all. A phrase, a sentence should not hurt you. Unless for some reason that the question shakes you at the core and it makes you question, maybe just for a second, just a little second, it made you question your entire belief system with one question. And then the default setting for most people in the institutionalized churches today is, why are you worried about that? It's not a salvation issue. That's the default setting, which I believe is the church's way out of answering questions, and also almost like using conspiracy theorists to dismiss or discredit if somebody happened to hear the question. So if somebody heard the question, oh no, I question my belief too. So let me say this real quick, so to make sure they don't fall the same way I did or get hurt, and it's like emotionally hurt. So that's where I'm at with that. So what's the question again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Just disclosure. No, you're good, man. Just like disclosure, and what do you think that's going to look like?
Okay. So the way I look at it now, the Confederate ones, the houses that intermingled with Esau. We get several times that Esau in the last days will be made bare. Well, who is Esau? Well, Esau's a pretty big family now because he intermingled. He spread his full seed. That was his agenda. And what else was Esau? Well, Esau was the first genetic engineer. He's the one that came up, like there is literally right in your Bible. I believe it's somewhere in Isaiah where it talks about this half man, half goat. That's what they did. They did that type of engineering or genetic intermingling. That all came out of Edom or Idumean, the Idumean Edom. But it's not just Esau though. It's the house of Kittim. It's the house of Yavan. It's the house of Ashkenaz. And there are many other houses that intermingled with the tabernacles of Esau. The modern day engineers. Well, back then, back when they were creating this conspiracy or this council of the crafty ones who knew prophecy better than anybody. Well, why would the Edomites know prophecy better than anyone? Well, who was Esau's dad? Mm-hmm. Right. You can't get no more close to the Most High than that, as far as Esau goes. And then his brother was pretty dang close to the Most High too. So, you know, he knows what the 12 tribes were going to do. They know all about them. They know exactly where they all are, where they're at right now. We don't, because we've been given a theater for a long period of time, right? But what I believe is going to happen is these old ones, these ancient ones, and it all depends on where you're at. If you're the type of guy who believes that the Watchers came with Genesis 6, and you see the Psalms 82 as the so-called divine ones that were assigned to the other nations, and the Most High took one people to himself. So you're looking at potentially 200 Watchers and potentially 70 divine ones, councilmen, hosts, the heavenly hosts, divine ones, whatever you want to call them. So you're looking at almost 300 of them. Just think about it. Have you ever heard that word 300 before? The 300? You know what I mean? So I think eventually the 300 is going to show themselves. And they're going to be the creators of the world. They're going to be all this blah, blah, blah. And they've been here the whole time. They're here now to save us. But and I could be 100% wrong. But the spacesuits, why the spacesuits? The interbody dwelling spacesuits. I got to come up with a better title. It don't flow good. So, but why the spacesuits, right? Well, the spacesuits, there's a war coming that most people don't talk about. And then if you read Ezekiel 37, and that's the thing, that people could read Ezekiel 37 and it means absolutely nothing to them. And then if it means nothing to you, then it means nothing to you. You know, I don't push my so-called theology, which I hate that word. I hate all things Hellenized. But anyway, my so-called theology tells me that this is a big deal. Ezekiel 37, this is a really big deal. We have to what's the word? Adjudicate what is being said here. And there's other places in the so-called Old Testament that kind of align with what is going to happen in Ezekiel 37. So that's an army. That's a great big army of men, mighty men, warriors. And so if you ever looked into especially how the Old Testament describes the so-called day of the Lord, right? It's brutal. Again, if you just look at it within the book that you hold in your hand, it's in there. And you have to do something with it. You either dismiss it or think, well, maybe that's the way the Most High envisioned it then. Maybe he changed. But what we're looking at is an army of soldiers that are literally coming out of the ground. And the Most High is weaving them back together, and he's going to put breath and life into them. And that's the day of the slaughter, the day of visitation. People don't want to hear that because they're like, he's just coming back to kill everybody. No, he's coming back. When he raises up that army, it's all about destroying the wicked off the face of the earth. In context, if we're just looking at that in context, and we look at all the passages that talk about the day of visitation in context, it's about dismantling the wicked. Shakes the earth, turns off the sun, moon, and stars, and he does the same thing he did in Mitzrayim, or so-called Egypt. What did he do? Turn the lights off there too, didn't he? Did all his work in the darkness. But he ain't going after the firstborn this time. He's going after the wicked.
It's funny. The more I research into mystery religion, and I'm excited to get your take on this. But it's something that a lot of people aren't really talking about. It's been brought up in this space, but the more I'm digging into this, divine feminine goddess worship, I see that Satan has set up a counterfeit trinity that I think he's going to present, or they'll come together, work together of some sort when these times start to kind of unfold. Because I personally think that Disclosure Day is like more of an antichrist revealing day, right? And I think that, yeah, we're gonna see a lot of interesting things taking place with this, right? The fact that humans can be used as avatars for other spirits is very wild to think of. But the UFO community is connecting these two things together.
Mm-hmm.
But this goes back to like ancient mythological worship of, I'm not saying that Nimrod is not real. He's definitely real, but the tradition was passed down through mythologies after this, where you had Nimrod, Semiramis, and Tammuz. Nimrod is like, I see the Gnostics talking about this idea, and that they kind of call this part of the Trinity like the hidden one, which would be like the Father. And then there's a divine goddess that's a part of this, that the two come together as a consort, and then they have an offspring together. And this is what I think is like the son of perdition. And I think this is like Horus and Thor and Tammuz and so on and so forth throughout all the different cultures. And it seems to be like what we're discussing with the synthetic fibers, kind of like they're developing a synthetic neural network where there's like they're setting up a synthetic biological overlay over us.
Perfect. There
right?
you go.
And
you only been talking to me what, an hour now, whatever,
yeah,
and you got it.
Yeah,
it's an overlay.
It's an overlay, right?
Yeah.
And I think what's really going to like connect people fully to the mother goddess, in my opinion, because there's Gnostics that are pushing the idea of Sophia right now through through modern culture, right? But I think that even people like occultists, for example, Nikola Tesla, he talked about the queen bee, that society should be set up and ran just like a bee colony. And I think with this overlay, there's a lot of things that we can imply that they want to connect us to some sort of hive mind. If everything is connected to the Internet of Things, which this could just be surface level ideas now, there's probably deeper things than that we don't know or hasn't been disclosed to us. But I think they're trying to set this up of some sort. It makes me think of when the people came together, and they all had one language, and they all said, "Let us come together and build a tower where they're going to bring the heavens to earth, or earth is going to go up into the heavens." Right? There's like a gateway to the gods, breakdown of Babel and the tower and all that. And again, that's a lot I'm throwing out here, but when you start putting them together, it seems like this could be something that happens, this digital overlay or synthetic biological overlay of us, I think has something to do with connecting to a hive mind as well.
Yeah, because you have to think. If you get some of the, of course, the so-called regular Bible doesn't give us the specifications of the tower, but you can see some apocryphal writings or whatever, or super big. I can't even say it. Whatever, pseudopitical, whatever.
Pseudographical. I don't know.
Yeah. But so these other so-called hidden books or whatever, what they give you is an astronomically big structure, like the biggest ever to be, like, I don't know, was it 200 miles at the base that way?
Right.
Whatever, something like that. And
the Great Plains of Shinar.
Yeah. So it took them, what was it, a year to get to the top where they were, I guess, to do what they were doing. And but was that an antenna? Was that like one of the first major antennas that were in place that was able to link everybody together?
Mm-hmm.
A big.
And what's wild too, that's a part of that Tower of Babel story that some people might just kind of let go over their heads because they don't know what to make of it. But the people also came together and they said anything. God said this, right? He's like, the people are doing this, and anything that they imagine to do, they will be able to do. And I think there will be some sort of occult connections with this. And this is where, Epstein was very curious of this. He was curious of the dark matter of the brain. And if you could some way through hemisync, there's a lot of different ways you can like activate both hemispheres of the brain to then activate or, kind of like manipulate the dark matter of your brain, which deals like with the unconscious and the subconscious parts of how the brain works. That if you can connect with that, you can do supernatural abilities. These were in like the files. This is why he recruited young women and people that were like homosexual as well, and younger people as well have more of like this intuition to connect with this kind of stuff or these ideas. But that's what that makes me think, right? If they can do this or provide to mankind a technology that will be able to do this, then I can really see like why Jesus really comes back, like in these times, these times are cut short because, and that there is like a battle of Armageddon. I just feel like, I feel like when it's saying anything that they imagine to do, I believe exactly what it's saying. They will be able to build these things. They'll be able to do, like, who knows how the pyramids exactly were put together. Was magic very common?
Well, that's the whole thing. Like, that was one of the first things that. So before my son was born, he was born while I was in the fire academy. So what is one of the first things you get in the fire academy? You get fire history. So we went from fire history, and what did he teach you? All the so-called great fires, right? And then what do they? They go from the great fires to building construction. And then when we started learning building construction, and then basically I'm looking back, and I was like, I was one of the first ones to have a question, and then of course your typical fire instructor in the academy. Oh, there's always one. There's always one that's got to ask a question, right? And so because everybody wants to get out because it was probably almost lunch, but anyway, I asked, I said, okay, we've been over building construction. We're going to take a test. I got a question about fire history now. Okay. So you're telling me that all these buildings burnt down to the ground and most of them were fireproof? Now, granted, there were lots of wooden structures, but there were also buildings that were classified that couldn't burn. Like, 2 towers, you may have heard of them. They weren't supposed to burn either. Now, content, room and context, yeah, that stuff burns all the time. But the structure itself would never succumb to fire. Mm-hmm. It would take days and days and days of fire with an astronomical amount of heat. But an astronomical amount of heat couldn't exist. Why? Because the room and context, the things that would burn is gone. It don't take long for to get flashover in these buildings that don't burn. So you get almost immediate flashover in a room, and then the fire has nowhere to walk because there's nothing left to burn. So the building should still be upright and standing. And that was kind of like the question I asked, in a sense. It was a long time ago, but and you know what the guy said? Who wants to go to lunch? That's what he said. And no, it didn't fall on anybody's ear in there. Nobody came up to me and was like, where's your mind at? Where's your mind at? Nobody. I was just another rookie in a room full of rookies with a senior firefighter teaching us that day. That's it. And they didn't really know me, and I didn't really know them yet. Mm-hmm. So, but nobody. I was like, wow. Why? You look at the rubble. Look at the rubble. It's like ashes on the ground on buildings that ain't supposed to burn.
Yeah. There's thermite in the rubble. Plus, a lot of the rubble was like had multiple chains of custody. You know, like it went through multiple.
I'm not even talking
hands
about that. I'm not even talking about that one. I'm talking about the old ones.
oh, jeez. Yeah.
I'm talking about fire history, the great fires. You know,
Mm.
that's what I'm saying, is that this has been going, this type of demolition has been going on for a long time. And even before our modern demolition that we're seeing, and we can't explain, we don't understand that our so-called historical narrative is mostly generated in a lie. Almost all of it. Almost all of it has to be a generated lie. Because it cannot even fit into the ancient world. You can't tell me that so many megastructures were built all over the gosh dang place. And we're not even close to being as advanced as they were.
Mm-hmm.
And we use half of their structures today. And people walk by them day in and day out, and they don't even think about it. It means nothing to them that they're walking past one of the oldest buildings in their city or state that cannot be replicated today at all. It doesn't cross their mind, because we've been taught this generated history that shows us men, barefooted men in diapers and towels on their head building a pyramid. That's what we get. And it's nonsense. You have to understand that those people, like just imagine the true Holy Land. That was the most advanced society in the entire world until the Most High demolished it and kicked them out.
Yeah. When I think of the pyramids, I've dug into this a little bit recently. They think that there's megalithic structures underneath the pyramids. There's now more of like the mystical aspect of the pyramid and what it was actually used for is coming more to, it's becoming way more popular than ever.
Mm-hmm.
And George St. Pierre, the UFC fighter, he was on Danny Jones' show, and he was talking about his experience when he went into the king's chamber. I forget which exact pyramid that is, but he went and he was able to lay down in one of the granite tombs or whatever it is, and he said he kind of started to feel like this frequency, like a vibration, where he said it was ultimately positive. And a lot of the ways he was characterizing it was like love and all of this stuff. I've heard the same thing when people meditate, and or if they've gone through what's known as like Kundalini awakening, they also connect with this spirit. And I think that the pyramid might have been used as some sort of like antenna to connect you to this spirit.
I'm pretty sure all of them were, because they were probably all based on the same platform that on smaller scale of the Tower of Babel.
Mm-hmm. And they're everywhere. They're everywhere around the world.
Everywhere. There's so many of them. There's so many of them.
Mm-hmm. And who knows exactly like the specific ways it was used as a piece of technology, but we know that it was used in that way. And if the tower, yeah,
there's a pyramid that's embedded in a hill at the Hoover Dam.
Whoa!
Yeah. I mean, they're literally everywhere. It's crazy.
Yeah, I know. There's some wild pictures too, of the Grand Canyon, and maybe there's some structures there. Who knows?
No,
but the Grand Canyon's pretty much
the Grand Canyon is, because they show us so many of these so-called hills and mountains that look melted in Colorado, in Utah, in every single movie you watch. It's in every TV show. They're showing you this backdrop in Utah. They're showing you this backdrop in Colorado that looks like so-called mountain range or eroded rock. But if you really pay attention to it and you really look at it, these were mega structures that got melted. I know it sounds stupid. It sounds stupid to most people. And it seems like you just got an active imagination. No, I just think that that's what to me personally, I've been looking at this for over 30 years and wrestling with what I believe or what I think. You know, if you ask the average person, and I get the same answer almost every single time, who destroyed Jerusalem?
Mm-hmm.
Who destroyed Jerusalem? And when?
What do you mean?
So we got this historical data that tells us that a particular people group destroyed Jerusalem. And who would you say that was?
Would be probably the Romans, right?
That's the so-called historical data point that we have that destroyed Jerusalem. But what if I tell you that the Old Testament tells you something else? The Old Testament tells you that the Most High Himself destroyed it. He desolated it. And you could read us all through Isaiah, Jeremiah, and Ezekiel was warning them nonstop about their ways of how they were the blood of the innocent, what they were doing. Those people became the most wicked people on the face of the earth. They went the way of the nations. The way of the nations. Why were they so dang wicked? Well, because they had other mighty ones, other principalities that were ruled over them. And if you read Psalms 82, you'll get an understanding that they became dark and twisted. They weren't supposed to, but yet they did. Again, the Most High will deal with them accordingly at some point. But the Old Testament tells you that He destroyed it. He did. And if you read the book of Joel, you actually get this story of what He did to the place. And as the people are running out of Jerusalem, they could see the land being desolated right behind them as they're running, almost akin to Sodom and Gomorrah. He actually compared Jerusalem to Sodom and Gomorrah. He compared it to them. Said, you have become more wicked than Sodom and Gomorrah. So what do I have to do? Same thing. So He did it. So most people, and I've asked so many people for maybe 20 plus years, I asked people that question. And that's how I know if I could talk to you about my stance on everything. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, there's really no need for us to continue forward, because what you're going to do is you're going to get in a million straw man arguments. And I've already done that. I've done that as a Southern Baptist, where I try to, I try to rule over you with my ideas or my ideology or my church mythos or my church slogan or whatever, our mission statement, whatever. I'm going to drive my church into you, whether you like it or not, and I'm going to win. But that's not how we learn.
Yeah,
that's not how we learn. And
well, you mentioned it too. That the church is, it doesn't. The church. I'm not speaking for every church, but for the majority, like they don't know how to answer these questions. They don't have. I don't think really there's a theology that they have or that they understand to give you a certain perspective. I think like they don't have a perspective. They believe in one certain thing. This is their theology, and they just go with it, and they put blinders up around everything else. That's why I have this show, to like discuss these topics, these ideas. This is like a normal conversation to try and pick these things apart.
So that's my main place of that's where I always start. I always start with the land. Always start with the land. Because it says I only need 2 witnesses, but I got more than 2 witnesses throughout the Old Testament that place would be an astonishment. And when the Most High restores the land, because it's all about being restoring the whole house of Jacob back to the land, because they're not there. The whole house of Jacob is not in the land because the land does not exist as we know it. It's desolate. It's in a ruin. It says Jerusalem is desolate. Zion is a wilderness, and Zion is a mountain. It's the Most High's holy, holy, holy mountain, where he comes down, kind of like Zeus in the mountains and all the so-called gods. That is Mount Olympus to him, is Zion. And people throw that word around all the time and not realizing, to me personally, this is my opinion, and a lot of people may give me a lot of pushback on it, but I don't care. But to use that word with any other way is like a slap in the Most High's face. It is, because that's Zion is his holy, 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 holy mountain. And right now he's decommissioned it, just like he's decommissioned Jerusalem. It's destroyed. It is a ruin, as it says in the Bible that you hold in your hand. It says that. And again, that is my starting point with the conversation. And it usually falls flat. I haven't seen many people pick it up and go with it, because it obviously is going to change your worldview. Now, if it changes your so-called belief, I don't know. But at minimum, it should give you a different light or lens to look through the theatrics of the day and understand that what is really true and going on, if the Most High himself destroyed the land. That changes everything. That changes especially the political theater today.
Yeah. And like the adversary, there's like this battle that's been going on since the beginning of time, in my opinion, between God and the adversary who's counterfeiting himself as God. Okay. And I say that with what's being pushed in culture right now is the lady. It's a Gnostic aspect. And when you read throughout the Bible, there's God's always at war with the lady. You can call her Ashtoreth, Isis, Hathor, whatever. God's always been like at war with the lady.
Isn't it also called the goddess of heaven sometimes?
Yeah, the queen of heaven, right? Like they would, I think it's maybe in Jeremiah, I think it is, but they would make cakes for the queen of heaven. Also they would weep for Tammuz. Like they were worshiping something that was counterfeiting God. I think this is why too God took Abraham out of Ur, which was an ancient Chaldean mystery city, and they were worshiping the goddess and all of this. And what's interesting too, just about Jerusalem and the Wailing Wall, they believe that it's Shekinah that dwells within the wall, and that wall is historically known for fortification and protecting the city. And what's funny is with the divine feminine, that's one thing that the divine feminine is known for throughout all the iconographies. She's always attached to the fortification of whatever empire or city she's worshipped in. The Greeks worshipped Rhea, right? Like in Nineveh, it was Semiramis, Isis, Ishtar, so on and so forth. And she was known for being this spirit of protection. And also, she's also connected with a lot of other things, precious stones, and also mountains and high places. And I think that too is what in the New Testament saying that we don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but principalities, powers, wickedness, and evil in high places. When you look at a lot of the paganism, they are worshiping this kind of same entity that's counterfeiting God, and is worshipped in these high places. One of these is known in the Phrygian times, which is like ancient Anatolia, Indo-European times, where they worshipped what's known as the mother of gods, or you could call her the queen of heaven, known as Cybele, or Cybele, however you want to call it. And you could see like the Catholic Church has developed something similar along the lines of these ancient Chaldean mysteries that passed through, the Phoenicians, the Egyptians, the Hittites, the Indo-Europeans. It kind of spread. And I think it all goes back to like Babel, right? Because God dispersed all these people, so they with their different languages, they all went out and started trying. They started to try and recreate what just got destroyed. You know, so I threw that in there because I think this is coming, and it's slowly going to start coming out more, where the world will worship this divine goddess again in some way. I don't know what it's going to look like exactly, but there's something to it. And it's Ezekiel 38, I believe. No, I'm sorry, it's Daniel chapter 11 verse 38. And this passage is kind of talking about the Antichrist. It talks about the kingdoms, that make this one image, right? Like the four different kingdoms, the iron mixed with clay, all this kind of stuff. But he's talking about the Antichrist, and it says there in verse 38 of chapter 11 that he honors the God of forces. He being the Antichrist, the God of forces being the divine feminine goddess. When it's saying forces right there, it's meaning fortification, which goes back to what the divine goddess was always worshipped for. And I don't know if this is going to take place in Jerusalem. We've got the third temple kind of talked about and all this, and I know that's a lot, but what do you think with all that, with like the third temple and
Well, here's the thing. You can't have a third temple if you don't have a land at all. If it don't exist, if it's gone. That's the thing that again, that's where I'm at. So I don't, if again, the Most High said that he destroyed that place, you can't have a new place. But you can. Well, just like when the 12 tribes were in captivity in what most people call Egypt. Egypt is not Mitzrayim. Again, when you look in your Bibles and you really look into it and you see what the source text says, the source text calls it Mitzrayim. And they are called Mitzrayites if you're looking at the people as a whole. So for me, Mitzrayim isn't Egypt, and Egypt isn't Mitzrayim. So what I believe has happened is the crafty council, shortly after the land was destroyed, and it remains that way. That's the prophecy. That's the prophecy in the Old Testament. It says that this place will remain a desolate place. It's multiple times, and will remain that way, be a wasteland until it's restored back to the whole house of Jacob. So if that is what it says, I believe it. Again, we're dealing with a multitude of people who have, you're dealing with all the way back to Darby. Then you jump from Darby to dispensational and all these different things, how the Most High dealt differently and all that garbage and a whole bunch of other stuff that he was pushing and promoted. Who comes along? Schofield. Schofield gets it to millions. So this guy, other guy, Darby, was traveling all over the gosh dang world when it was extremely expensive. So he was going all over the so-called world, if he even existed. But either way, the story existed. So it doesn't matter to me. The story exists just like all our history exists, which I think most of them are stories. And so this guy travels all over the world when it was extremely expensive to spread his theology or his ideology. And then in 1909, this guy Schofield comes along and he creates this reference Bible with no so-called training, and it infests and infects a lot of the world.
Yeah, some people even say like it was a Rothschild funded thing, right?
I don't know. All I know is that the story says, the narrative that we're given is in 1909, this guy published this book, this reference book, and a lot of people took it up like a biscuit and gravy and ate it. And then in 1917, we got the Balfour Declaration. We got this creation. We're going to make something. So men made something. So you got, religious devotion and political engineering. See what I'm saying? So the two married each other, and now all of a sudden we can't look at our scripture and see that the Most High himself destroyed this place, we can't see that because there's a new place.
Where would you say like we're at on the timeline of things?
I don't know.
It's a tough question. I know it is a tough question.
I don't know. I mean, we could go back and probably watch interviews all the way back into probably the 50s and 40s or whatever, if you can find them. And they're asking each other back then, same question you're about to ask me, or you just asked me. You know, I don't know. I really don't know. It's difficult to say, but I can tell you what's happening to us biologically is not sustainable. It is not sustainable of what we're seeing, what my colleagues are seeing. And some of my colleagues, especially in the EU and Australia, New Zealand, what they're seeing is devastating.
What do you mean by it's not sustainable?
Okay, if I take your blood, take a sample of your blood, and shortly after the blood leaves your body, that it implodes on itself. Like every single cell ruptures. That's wild.
Would you say it's like a half-life? Maybe
it takes a long time for your body to for your blood to die.
Oh wow, yeah.
They're like within seconds. You know, and I have a handful of colleagues that all have seen this.
Yeah.
And this is relative.
What are your thoughts with like when the Bible says that the life is in the blood?
Oh, I believe it 100%. That is our blood is one of the most important things. And that's why the engineers of this world, whether they're physical, spiritual, or whatever they are, I don't care because it's happening. It don't matter who's doing it to me. Just like if I walk out my door and I take a 9 to the chest every single day, I'm not just going to put a bulletproof vest on and that's the fix. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of where we're at today, because that's all we can do, because we can't see our enemy, because our enemy is an ancient coward. That's the way I see it. They do everything. They do everything from afar instead of come and show themselves to men, real men, which there aren't many left. And I saw that with 2020 and 2021 and 2022. I saw many cowards, and because real men didn't stand up. I mean, more women stood up than men. And I was like, wow, where is the men? That's disgusting. It was so disgusting. I'm surprised I didn't get PTSD from all that nonsense, because it was so disgusting to me, the way that we're surrounded by so many cowards. And people who lack knowledge, like just basic reading comprehension on law. The law says you can't do this, but yet you are, and you're getting away with it. And I think that's was the most important aspect of that error. And I'm talking about both, like the ERA and the ERROR, or whatever, the error and the error, time and the mistake merged together, right? You're looking at the molding of the minds. And so the people who were wicked and twisted, who had it underlying, who would love nothing more than to get twisted on people. That's what the 2020 did for them.
Yeah. What's your thoughts with like chemtrails and all of this? You know, I'm kind of circling it back around to like what we talked about earlier in the show, but like with route of you know how these things are able to.
Well, I told you in the very beginning, like what you asked me about the route of infestation, or is inhalation, because that's one thing you can't stop. You can't stop breathing.
Right.
Now these materials also accumulate on your skin, and this is where you get. And I worked in the ER for almost 10 years, and I've seen so many people sent into behavioral health because they come in there and they say that they feel like their skin's crawling, but not all, but a vast majority of what's going on is they have accumulated materials, piezoelectric in nature materials accumulated on their skin. So as you would see, like when I first started in the ER, we had low infrastructure, and most of the cities had low infrastructure. But year after year, what do you get? More infrastructure, more antennas, more wireless communications. And then you get to a point in the ERs themselves is nothing but an electrical hotbox. And the electricity is from the floor to the ceiling. And I mean wireless communications. So every hospital has a mesh network system. So every single computer, every single tablet, every single cell phone, they have network cell phones now that operate within hospitals. So you got nurses who they walk around with their cell phone and they walk around with the network cell phone that only operates within the facility. And they all have one. And some of them have telecommunicating devices in their badge. Most have RFID, but some have other communication transmitting devices in their badge. So the healthcare people, these people are being bombarded. Mm-hmm. But as you see that happening, if you're paying attention, most people don't pay attention. Most people fall into this category that I call active ignorance. Like their body actively ignores everything going around them. They only focus on their little task, their little job, their little world. That's them. So a nurse comes in, she has her favorite little cubicle or favorite little zone she sits. She focuses on the 3 to 4, maybe 5 patients that she has. And whatever the doctor says, she does. She doesn't really, not all, I'm not blanket statement. There are many great nurses that are some of the best people on earth. I worked with them. I didn't see many of those. Not within the building that I worked in, the facility I worked at. I saw more robots or drones than I actually saw people who were looking, who were paying attention, who weren't afraid to buck the system or say, no, we can't do that. You just gave them this. If we give them that, it's a contraindication. You don't have that. More nurses, what I saw more nurses give medications that were contraindicated to a patient back then because a doctor ordered it, even though the doctor just ordered this other thing and she already gave it. He saw that she gave it and he still ordered the next thing, which was contraindicated. And they do it. But that don't really happen too much anymore because they got an algorithm, they got a system that runs all that. Like the doctor is almost literally a figurehead, just sitting there, putting his name on it. He has an electrical stamp for his name. All right, I sign off on this AI-generated healthcare plan that we're going to administer to this patient based on all our feedback from our labs and our imaging. You think the doctor did that? No.
Right. There's a system, man, that's followed. I wanted to. Have you heard of like?
Did I answer the question?
Yeah.
I just run off, man.
No, you're good. I love it, man. I figured we can come in for our initial descent. We got I'd say another 10 or 12 minutes or something. One thing I've researched, I've gotten into are a few patents, and these patents are about quantum dots. And there's different kinds of quantum dots.
Mm-hmm.
There's graphene quantum dots. There's like even lipid nanoparticle quantum dots. It's a way to get into the cellular structure because the cell doesn't really want to allow any of these things in. So we force our way in with certain things. Epstein talked about quantum dots. And I think where his thoughts were with quantum dots is, he wanted to map out the brain. And if he could map out the brain, I think this would even help artificial intelligence companies come up with their systems because they develop AI based off the brain pretty much with neural networks and all of this. But quantum dots seems to be like in the medical field used as a sensor or some way to retrieve or
what was that picture that we tried so hard to get shown really good for a while? What was that picture about? That's what it was about. These biosensors. Mm-hmm. And why doesn't your body reject them? Right.
They've built some sort of compatibility.
That's right.
Right.
Self versus non-self.
Yeah.
The invader is not the invader.
Right. Exactly. It's wearing the same uniform pretty much of
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know,
Same,
and it made
same ID.
yeah, exactly. It made me the quantum dot stuff because I dug in and people have heard me talk about this on other shows but the quantum dots seem to be like a sensor um, that is able to transmit its data through light and pixels. Um, the fascinating thing is I've connected a patent, the Microsoft patent. We've all kind of maybe heard of this patent, the 060606. It's got capabilities to be able to mine cryptocurrency and to buy and sell. And I've noticed through some of the research that you're able to do the same thing with quantum dots. They're not specific of how the science works behind that, but you're able to even connect these quantum dots to uh, products in merchandise, right? Or it's a new barcode system that's able to be compatible with our biologics with quantum dots, a part of the body.
Right.
They even connect to ledgers and blockchains and cryptocurrency. So I see a connection between all of that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Well, again, I kind of touched on it a little bit. We're going right back to that again, that thumbnail that you showed, and we're going back to the biodigital convergence at the end of the day, and that's what they're doing, and that's what the whole, again, that was 13 years ago. They were talking about. They were like they were in theory. Hey, if we could do all these sensors, right? We could put all these sensors in you, and no wires, and we can monitor you from home. Just think about them talking about that back then, that they can monitor you from home. So most people who leave the hospital with who have a cardiac issue, so a new onset atrial fibrillation or new onset some other arrhythmia that isn't necessarily lethal, and they just want to monitor. Maybe they're throwing a PAC or a PJC or PVC or something like that. But instead of sending you home with a halter monitor, they just send you home, and then they give you a printout. And you're like, do you know most people wouldn't even question how they ascertain 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month of cardiac output? They wouldn't question it. There's a lot of people to be like, thank you. They would not even, like, I sent you home with nothing. How do you have his data? And that, brother, I'm telling you that a high percent of people would say, thank you. What's our next step? Seriously.
Wow. Yeah. That's the reality today, man. I'm telling you, it's demoralization on such a different level. I think his name's Yuri Bismanov. This is a guy who used to work for the KGB in like the 70s and stuff. Yeah. And to how to really destroy a country from within is to demoralize, destabilize, and then normalize all of that. We might be in that normalized process
we've been through that loop. We've been looped.
Right.
We've been cycled.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we go through demoralization and we go through these 3 cycles like pretty quick, and I think probably since World War II, I think it was the slow movement leading up to World War I. It got faster. The cycles got faster. World War II. Then after, Vietnam, they got even faster, and then they get the cycles of demoralization. I mean, you could just look on, most of your short reels or, these paradigm channels that are talking about politics and, showing you that, hey, we got all these people wearing dresses and crowns, reading books to you, and they're men, to your children. And nobody questions or answer. Like it just exists. You got little boys jumping around wearing girls' clothes, going into girls' bathroom, and then we have problems. And then that little boy does something, but does he get expelled? No, he gets transferred. He just harmed a little girl, but he was wearing a little girl's clothes. right? But he gets transferred. Then he does it again. And what does he do? What do they do again? They transfer him, right?
Yeah.
And like nobody, there's no justice for that, because we're dealing with a bunch of reprobates, as far as I'm concerned. But like you allow these things, like now I wouldn't say everybody, but it's still happening. It's still occurring. It's problematic, and it blows my mind. It blows my mind that these things could happen so often, so frequent, and they're real. And that's the main thing I focus on is these things that we're seeing on the media, even on the social media, the alternative media, all these people that everybody has a mic, everybody's talking in a mic all the time. Is he telling the truth?
Right.
Is he or she telling us the truth? And that's the one good thing about my client base that I have. I have a multitude of clients, multitude of friends, and in every state in this United States. So if something goes down, I'm here to tell you. I know what shortly after it sometimes before it hits YouTube or it hits any kind of agency as far as news goes, I already know, because I've done the work. I talk to people. I talk to real people in the real world, and I'm not just using my mic to talk to just talk, speak.
Right.
You know, I'm using my mic for one to show you what's happening to you, one, and two, I also use that avenue so people can reach out to me and talk to me. And so I've made friends. I made lots of friends. I also made lots of frenemies too. But that's what happens when you're online. You have wolves. Wolves sneak in, and the wolves try to. They're crafty too.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're very crafty.
I did an episode, Wolves in Sheep's Clothing, not too long ago. And that's part of the game, man. There was a Judas, like in the group that was following Christ. Like there's Satan will try and kind of weave his way into something that's good, and try and destroy it or corrupt it or destabilize it unannounced. Right.
I think I was surrounded by 2 or 3 at any given time, most of my time online. Since I've been online. Since I've been online, since I've been talking about what I've been talking. I've been talking about what I've been talking about for almost 5 years now. Now my YouTube doesn't reflect that, because the vast majority of my content is on BitChute, because BitChute was the only place that I could upload, and never got deleted.
Right, man. Brother, this has been a pretty awesome episode, man. This is our first of many. I'd love to definitely work with you, man, in the future. I usually kind of close out the shows a little bit with a positive message, something you want to reflect with the audience. We covered a lot of some serious things. These are serious conversations.
Yeah.
And we've gotten great feedback. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Much love. Appreciate everyone for tuning in, man. We had a really good turnout tonight. But yeah, man, if there's anything, you want to reflect with the audience and just if there's anything positive you'd like to share.
Right. And I know there's a lot of suffering going on. Trust me, I know. But with that being said, if we look back at creation and we look back at how resilient we are to now you have understanding that a lot more things are going on than you probably knew before he hit go or record or live, whatever y'all do on Stream World. But before ever he hit start, you may have learned something today. You may have learned that there's a lot of things going on in our biology that's not supposed to be going on. You probably learned some new terminology, or I hope you have written down on a piece of paper. But just know this, that the Most High created what I would say is a hard to kill being. And trust me, I was in public service almost 20 years, and I seen how difficult it is to take us out. You're still standing today. Your feet might hurt, your knee might hurt, your hip might hurt, but guess what? Gosh dang it, you're standing. And we are remarkable. We are way more remarkable than we would ever can imagine. And I've seen that resiliency. I've seen that physical strength that comes out of freaking nowhere. And that's because we're all tied to something greater than all of us. And so just know that. And that's my message. And hopefully it landed on you good.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it, man. And also, you know, thank you for your service, you know, in the fire industry, all that stuff, everything you've done. You know, I just interviewed the last show I just put out. She's awesome. Fringe. She did law enforcement for 20 years. So there's people, man, you know, that, from you know, our background and what we do as a career, or did as a career. There's people talking about these things, man. I love it.
Good.
And I'm building a network myself, you know, of people out there that I like to bring into my community and have these conversations, man. Where can the audience support you, you know, in your content creation and all that?
Well, if you find my YouTube channel, and again, you're gonna put that in the description box. From the, I guess, the more section, if you click the more section, you can go and find everywhere I post. And if you go to BitChute, if you click the BitChute, yeah, go ahead and do it while we're doing it.
Boom. You see it?
Nope.
Oh, me. Bring it up, yeah. BitChute. I haven't used this, man. I haven't used BitChute before. Boom.
So go to the about section.
Yeah. Bam.
Okay, right there in the about section, you have a list of playlists at the very bottom. There's some links at the bottom. So these are all my playlists right there. And you can see all my work that I've done. And you can see how some of it was like, man, what is this dude actually saying or doing or whatever? But you can see the progression of my understanding of what I was seeing and what I was, you know, that's what comes with talking with real people, real researchers, real scientists, real microbiologists, real people in the real world who do the real work, who do science. Over time, I started talking to those folks and my understanding grew, and I was able to show you in better light, basically, figuratively, because that's what the microscope uses, is light. So in a better light, I was able to show you what's going on in our biology. And so again, if you look at all that, don't be scared. That should tell you that, man, gosh dang it, we're still kicking, we're still going. And some of us, even though some of us are going through the gosh dang ringer, but they're still pretty gosh dang strong, and they're still pretty resilient, and they still bring a light. I've seen so many men and women who are suffering. And my son, Aiden, was suffering to no tomorrow in his last 5 years. But I tell you what, again, that boy smiled for me every day. That boy hugged me every day, even with his gosh dang heart was going 160, 170 miles per hour. And I could feel it in my chest. But he's sitting there hugging me. He gave me a smile every gosh dang day. And so if he didn't do that, I'd probably be a puddle of crumbs or a puddle of mud. I would be nothing. But he was my drive. He was my secondary energy. He was my secondary gas tank, if you will. And that's the man you're dealing with. When you're dealing with me, you're dealing with a man who loved his son and didn't want to see him suffer, and did everything within his power to seek the Father, the Most High, and to learn as much as I could, to do everything I could to make the suffering less.
Well, I appreciate you, man. And you know, you have a strong testimony, and you know, blessings to you, your family, everything that you've got going on. You know, if you need anything, you reach out, and I'm excited to see my community kind of, you know, go over and check out some of your stuff, man, because you do put in a lot of awesome work. You focus on information that a lot of people aren't aware of. And, you know, it's something that I enjoy also tuning into and watching your content, learning a little bit. And so I appreciate you, man. I thank you for coming onto the show. I thank you for getting into the things with me and some of the weird conversations, right?
I'm sorry if I seem like a like a jackrabbit. It's like I feel like I'm just jumping all over the place. I ain't really saying nothing.
No, but you know what? We were tying in some of these things together, and really, it's maybe it's conjecture. I don't know, speculation, whatever you want to call it. But I think we're on to something. The audience definitely is supporting these ideas as well. They're
called brainstorming.
We got some OGs in here, man. You know, we got people that have been in this space for a while, man.
This is the first time we talked, so all we did was a brainstorming session.
Yeah, exactly.
So at the end of the day, all you didn't really say anything, but you got a lot of notes.
I like to say that I know maybe a little of a lot, and that's kind of what it looks like sometimes.
That's what a firefighter is. A little bit about everything.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you. Don't go anywhere. Stay in the stream after it's all done and everything, and I want to chat with you a little bit in the green room.
Okay.
But everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope I didn't miss anything here that's important to you guys. But thank you for each and every one of you for tuning into the show. The chat probably is over 1,000 chats this episode. That's pretty cool, man. People are engaged with the conversations that we're having. But shout out to all of y'all on audio platforms, YouTube, wherever you're at. If you do want to support the show, be sure to hit that subscribe button, follow button, wherever platform you're on. That's where we're at. And you know, drop a comment on this video. Definitely helps things. But if you want to support on audio platforms, I'm on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Spotify, and be sure to support the guest too. I'll be putting his links in the description after this video is done. But thank you, everyone. God bless. I'm going to see you next time.